Page 40. Note. We treat each Paul song as if he had authored its sentiments. That's partly true. Although highly focused on the work at hand, George Martin also showed genuine interest in John and Paul's experience. Occasionally, John or Paul shared concerns or feelings that could be worked into songs for them. Working for Tavistock, the lead songwriter sometimes understood their situation more clearly than they understood it themselves. Accordingly, he wrote what John or Paul would feel if they comprehended their situation. We Can Work It Out partly originated from Paul's own concerns, but included layers of meaning that were beyond him. Page 43. Note, the Byrds, turn, 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 help turn youth from parents, tradition and religion to the peace, love, sex and drugs counterculture. Their anti-war obsession targeted the Vietnam War, the American War to the Vietnamese, which had begun in 1955. Since whatever we put energy into increases, being pro-peace would have worked better than being anti-war. However, it was not designed to work. Before the youth's anti-war campaign, the most influential conservative voters already objected to John F. Kennedy increasing the number of American military advisors in Vietnam to 16,000. Although the U.S. military-industrial complex sought to escalate the war, Congress needed a reason. On the 2nd of August 1964, the North Vietnamese showed aggression in the Gulf of Tonkin by returning fire on the destroyer USS Maddox, which had only fired warning shots. The Maddox then fired more, killing 4 North Vietnamese and wounding 6 more. There were no U.S. casualties. The National Security Agency, NSA, claimed that a full battle occurred there 2 days later. Lyndon B. Johnson was informed that the report was false, but convinced Congress of the necessity of using the Gulf of Tonkin incident as America's door to war. At that time, the U.S. Naval Forces commander there was Admiral George Stephen Morrison. With military-funded support in Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles, Admiral Morrison's son, Jim, went on to be the lead vocalist of The Doors. Before the Gulf of Tonkin incident, plans were already set to hijack the peace movement away from the conservative intellectuals and to place it squarely in the hands of those whom conservatives would see as freaks, later renamed hippies. Once the Beatles made their debut in America, other bands were manufactured in England and in California, including The Doors, who produced a blend of folk music and rock infused with psychedelics. The freaks, dressed in strange costumes, danced in such peculiar ways that they became the primary attraction of popular clubs. The media brainwashed Americans to equate the peace movement with repulsive freaks who dropped out of society to indulge in drugs and open sex. Those dirty hippies wore broken cross, anti-Christian peace signs, and habitually said peace while flashing Aleister Crowley's victory hand sign, which MI5 had taught Churchill via the British Naval Intelligence Division. By the manipulation of painting flower children as evil hippies who called for peace, society's most conservative good people opposed all peace rhetoric. They saw fighting in Vietnam as a manly, patriotic Christian duty. Opposing dirty hippies, Christians supported killing innocent people in foreign lands without realizing that the conflict had no American advantage, but only killed to profit war machine corporations and international bankers. Flipping war perceptions from evil to good, the U.S. military funded bands and provided a base of operation at a military installation in Laurel Canyon. The Byrds, who covered Pete Seeger's Turn, Turn, Turn to Everything There Is a Season, was one of their first manufactured bands. The Beatles were coached to name the Byrds as their favorite American band. Laurel Canyon became the world's hub of musicians. There, John Paul, George Ringo, and William connected with American artists of that engineered and/or highly assisted circle. They knew each other well. With outside help, the most gifted among them carried the talent for those lacking it, but who possessed the desired image or lineage. Glenn Campbell's talent, for example, is uncredited on many albums. Page 46. Chapter 4. Paul's Girls. Note: sometimes in his songs and in the memoirs, William changes words to create multiple meanings, especially to conceal a sensitive story, such as changing he in a Paul song to she as if a love song. The double meaning in this chapter's title, Paul's Girls, refers to his lovers and daughters even though the first offspring mentioned is the son. Page 47. Note: while at the Cavern Club, John and Paul showed potential as rockers. However, more impressive than their performance skills, Paul's high-arching eyebrow reminded the cabal of the Eye of Horus and of predictions that had been made in connection with Horus. And with Paul's birth and death, Paul's facial characteristics resembling the magician's son, William, reinforced the magician's teachings, making their fulfillment increasingly plausible. Paul and William were both of great interest, with John, who was spoken for by an uncle, as Paul's attendant. The Beatles and William, like two pots over a fire, were watched over as if by a coven of cooks. Page 49. Note: on the 14th of June 1965, Paul met with George Martin at Studio 2 for preliminary work on Yesterday, followed by recording I'm Down and I've Just Seen a Face. While there, Paul showed George Martin the photograph of Michelle and recited a few lines of Michelle. On the 3rd of November, minutes before Paul began recording it, George presented the completed song. Page 54. Note: most people miss the connection between the international military-industrial complex and the entertainment industry. They grow from the same stump that gives life to the world's money supply. That same conglomerate endeavors to control all industries that significantly impact human beliefs, attitudes, and behavior. EMI's relationship with German intelligence became conspicuous by the Nazis they hired immediately after World War II. John hoped his cardboard cutout would push EMI into further disclosure. The Bavarian Illuminati, one should recall, originated in Bavaria, which is part of Germany. When discussing the current Nazis or Illuminati, it is the same governance, but under new labels. German officials operating within the cultic inner circle, as well as others of Western European prominence, understood EMI's switch to the illuminated Paul, who would facilitate the revolution in preparation for their NWO. Erica's legal case provided a predicament for the German government. Germany is a key player in the coming one world government, with its one world currency and one world religion. The New Age religion includes the sect of Paulism. They understand the situation. Without comprising shared agendas or undermining affiliations, they could not allow Erica's court case to prove that William is not Paul. However, based on the submitted DNA, the court also could not prove that William is Paul. The only solution was to delay until they could dismiss the case on the technicality without taking it to trial. Chapter 5. Drive My Car Backwards, page 58. Note: later, when enlisted by EMI, the Beatles were initially marketed to a conservative demographic, in opposition to the Rolling Stones, who were slated to be the bad boys of rock and roll. The public personas created for John, Paul, George, and Ringo were to start as naive and innocent Liverpool lads. Evolving while the world watches and sings along, the fellas would gradually mature into broad-thinking men of the world. All would see them outgrow childish inhibitions, embrace enlightenment, and expand their wealth and world power. As intended by the social engineering experiment, those who followed them would likewise mature in those ways. Initially, when the Beatle Boys played the innocent card, the public could not know they used Preludon to stay awake and lively for performances, and absolutely could not know about their drug experimentation to get high. In addition to drugs, they became fond of cannabis in 1964, which by the next year had taken over enough to interfere with their work when filming Help. Later, as their personas awakened into broader thinking when William stepped in, they were finally allowed and even required to be open about LSD and other drugs and to encourage their fans to follow along.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.